Sales items in CenterPoint are used to maintain a list of products and services that your business sells. Without the inventory module, a sales item setup can include pricing information, but it does not track quantities on hand. Instead, sales items simply provide a convenient list of items that you can include on sales invoices. To set up a new sales item, we're going to go to Setup and Sales and Items, but of course, if it is a quick list menu option over on your quick list, you can select that as well. We're going to have a list of different items that we can go ahead and either edit or delete or so on, but this is a list of items that have already been created in my database. To add a new item, we're going to come down here to the bottom on the buttons down here at the bottom. We're going to click New. Okay, to go ahead and create a new item, the first thing we need to identify is an abbreviation for that item. This abbreviation needs to be unique, and it can be up to 24 characters. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my abbreviation for the item that we're creating. Just a second, I have to grab the abbreviation that I need. So that is going to be a BEC 7085425. Okay, so we're creating a sales item for a new bike helmet. So this is a BEC Adult Primus bike helmet. Okay, now that is what would print on the invoice. If you need additional description for that invoice, you also want to go down here to additional description and put in any other details that you also want to print on your invoice, such as I might want to put in that it is a universal adult size and that size is 54 to 61 centimeters. I might want to put in the style number. Then that is 5425, and I might want to go ahead and put in the color as gunmetal. If I'm done with my description, I could go ahead and close that. And if I ever need to go in and edit that again, I can go ahead and go to the description again. For some reason, it didn't save that, so I'm going to go ahead and put it in. I think I accidentally canceled out of there, so we'll go ahead and we'll put it in again. 54 to 61 centimeters. The style is 7085425, and the color was gunmetal. Okay, last time I didn't click the OK. This time we'll go ahead and click the OK. After that, we can go ahead and choose the type. And there's only two types without the inventory module. There is a non-tracked type, or there is a service item. So this is going to be non-tracked merchandise. So basically merchandise that we sell that we don't maintain quantities for. Okay, we can then go ahead and assign an item to a sales group. The sales group is basically just used for tracking sales on the sales by group report. So you can group various sales reports by sales group. So it's an optional thing. It's not actually optional. You do have to choose a sales group. We have a default group out there called the general group. So if you don't want to create groups, you can put everything in the general group. And if you do want to create groups, to create a new group, you just click New, and it's simply giving that group an abbreviation and a name, and then it would be one of the options on the list here. So I have a group that I've created called Helmets, because we want to track what different bike helmets that we do sell. Okay, after that, we can go ahead and choose a sales tax category. Now, I've only got two sales tax categories. I have one for general merchandise and one for service. And if you need to create a new sales tax category, you could click New here, and you would give it an abbreviation and a name, and you would tell it which sales tax jurisdictions apply to that to that sales tax category. There are separate videos on creating sales taxes, sales tax categories, and sales tax jurisdictions. So you'll want to review those videos if you need to have that information. So we're going to go ahead and just choose general for ours. This is for general merchandise. And then the status of that item, whether it is current, discontinued, or obsolete. Since this is a new item for us, it is a current item. You do have the ability to put in a weight for that item. So mine's 1.6 pounds. That's not required. It's completely optional, but it does help for packing purposes to know what the weight of the item is. So it might be good information to have in the system. Here you're going to go ahead and determine if an item or service is subject to a tax when sold to customers that are not tax exempt. Okay, so obviously it would still not be taxable for customers that are tax exempt, but for those that are not exempt from taxes, this would be a taxable item. We also have the ability to mark whether or not trade discounts apply. There are separate videos on how to set up those trade discounts. But if an item or service is subject to a trade discount when sold to a customer that are assigned a trade discount percentage in the setup of customers, a trade discount will be calculated. Okay, they can be overridden on the invoice though, so it'll get calculated and you still have the option of overriding it on the invoice. We're not using trade discounts, so I'm going to leave mine as not marked. To right of that, you have the ability to link this to an image file of some sort. So if you wanted to display a photo of this item, you can go ahead and link to that file. So I can go ahead and go to my desktop and go ahead and link to the item. If you wanted it to appear in the box here, you would check this box here. Otherwise, you can always just click on the link. And in this case, it's going to ask me what program to go ahead and open it with. And I'm going to go ahead and say which program, and then it would bring up a picture of the item. So you don't have to have it in the box all the time. You can make it just be a link that you go ahead and select over here. Down on the bottom part of the screen, so the bottom half of the screen, we have the ability to go ahead and choose up to 3 different levels of sales prices. When we're setting up customers, we can assign a customer to a certain sales price level, and we could go ahead and set up pricing for those different sales price levels. My company uses 2 sales price levels, so if they are at sales price level 1, they pay $32.99 for this item. And if they're at sales price level 2, they go ahead and only pay $28.99 for the item. Okay, so you can have up to 3 sales price levels. And the sales price level for a customer gets assigned to the customer when you set up the customer. That is included in the customer setup video. You can tell us what the unit of measure is for this item. So you can have just 1 unit of measure for that. So is it an each? Is it dozen? Is it a case? Or do you need a new unit of measure? If you need a new unit of measure, you can go ahead and click new here and set up a new unit of measure. Setting up units of measure is also a separate setup video that you can review. So I'm going to go ahead and just choose each. And then you have the ability to put in a suggested price and a unit cost for that item. The suggested price is the price recommended by the manufacturer or vendor. It's an information only field and it's optional. So if I wanted to, I can go ahead and put in the price recommended by the vendor. And then the unit cost of the sales item, it needs to be greater than 0 if you're going to put it in, but it's an informational field only as well. So if I said that our unit cost was $17, I could go ahead and enter that in there. Okay, but again, it's optional and it's not a required field here, more for informational. So then you could go ahead and you do need to identify the accounts that are going to get hit when this particular item is sold. So you do have the ability to go ahead and choose a sales account here. So we're going to go ahead and choose our sales account here. Okay, so I have a product sales revenue account. So that's our sales account. And then you optionally have the ability to go ahead and identify a returns and allowance account and an expense account here. It will then ask you which account is going to be used for returns and allowances. And I actually have a returns and allowances account set up. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that returns and allowances revenue account. It's actually a contra revenue account. It's going to get debited when somebody does return something. Then I'm going to have an expense account, and this expense account is used when this item is purchased on a purchase order of some sort. So if you happen to have the purchase order module, this would be the account that is actually debited. So I'm going to go ahead and put in my cost of goods sold account for that. Okay, and then we have one other tab that is optional, but that's an other information tab. And so if you had any other information about this, any custom fields that you had set up, we could go ahead and enter that in over here. But you do have to go ahead and set up a preference to allow for custom fields here on this screen before you can go ahead and use it. So to set up those custom fields, I'm going to just save the item as we have it right now because really all the required information is in there right now, and I'm going to close out of that. If you have other pieces of information that you want to track about these sales items, you could set up custom fields by going to File and Preferences, and then go to Items, highlight Item Custom Fields, and then you need to go to the Database tab. And this will allow you to set up to 5 custom fields for it. So I might have in there a bin number where that item is stored. And maybe we also have a aisle number. We can also say whether or not this piece of information is used and whether or not it's required. So we'll go ahead and make that required, and we'll go ahead and also put in an aisle number. Okay, so an aisle number and bin number, and we're going ahead and we're making both of those be required. I'm going to go ahead and click Save, and then I'm going to go to Setup and Sales and back into Items. And now if I go into my item that I just set up and I go over to the Other Information tab, you're going to see here where I have to go ahead and say what bin it is and what aisle. So I can go ahead then and click Save on that. And that is the setup of items. Now to edit an existing item, you would need to go to Setup and Sales Items as well. And you can go ahead and just double click on an item. So I'm going to go ahead and edit my existing item. So I could either highlight it and click Edit or double click on it. Now you can pretty much change almost anything in here. It will not change previously entered transactions of any sort. So for example, if you change the sales tax category on that so that the sales taxes calculate differently, it's not going to change previously calculated transactions, but you can go ahead and change, it to some other sales tax category. Or if you wanted to change which group it's being reported in, you can change which group it's being reported in. You can change the numbers, the unit of measure, suggested unit prices, and everything. So pretty much everything within this setup can be modified even after transactions have been entered in on that item. Okay, you can delete sales items. So if I go to Setup and Sales and Items again, you can delete a sales item, but only if it hasn't been used in a transaction. If you go to delete an item that has been used in a transaction, you would get a message like this saying that you're unable to delete the remaining items because it's been used in a transaction. Sometimes you have one item that is going to be a pretty similar setup to another item. So for example, if I happen to have another bike helmet, maybe the Beck Child version of the same helmet, I could copy this item and then I could give it a new abbreviation. So I could go ahead and put in that this is the Beck Primus Child helmet. And then go ahead and put in whatever description I need to, change it to a child size, put in a different number here. So we'll say child here. And then we'll put in what the size of that is. So we're going to say that that is from 38 to 38 to 52 centimeters. And that color is also going to be gunmetal. So we'll go ahead and click OK on that. So it just goes ahead and allows you to use some of the options that were previously in that prior one. Actually, I wanted to add a 6 to the end of that, that were in that prior item that I copied. And now I can go ahead and, just change the pieces of information that are different. So their helmet is $29.99. And if they're at sales price 2, they're going to get it for $26.99. Okay, and I could go ahead then and also change the suggested price and the unit cost on that. And then click Save. Okay, so you can go ahead and use the copy feature to create a new item that is very similar to an existing item. Okay, if you happen to set up an item more than one time on the list, the combine feature would also allow you to combine those two items. I don't have two items right now that need combining. Be careful when using that feature though. It does allow you to combine two items that maybe you didn't mean to combine together. So it's always good practice when doing any kind of combining within CenterPoint to go ahead and do a backup of your database before you do any combining. Okay. So that is the setup of sales items. Just a few reports that I want to point out underneath reports. And underneath, if I go to the section called setup list, there's sales items and then sales items price list. If I simply want a list of the sales items that I've set up, I can go ahead and get a list of the different sales items. Now you should be able to filter that by the sales group. We should also be able to group it by the sales group. So I should be able to come over to the grouping and then group that by a sales group. And let me go ahead and do that. So you can see, so you can make modifications to the report and get it grouped by the sales group. But what this particular report doesn't give me is it doesn't give me any pricing information, but it does give me setup information about these particular items. If you're looking for pricing information though, then perhaps you want to move to the section called sales items and price lists. We have two default reports. The first one is basically going to show you just an item price list, and it is in order by the abbreviation. So that's what it's in order by. Of course, you can change that order to any one of these columns, but it's basically showing the suggested price for items and then what our sales price is based off of our different sales price levels. Okay, so if you only have one level, you could take those columns off for the other levels. So you can only, have it show only the columns that you want it to show. But this is just giving you a list of all the items by the abbreviation. Now, another version of that report, but can be made from the report that we were just on, but this one's already formatted this way, is the one called item price by sales group. Now this one will actually let you filter for a specific sales group or to preview it for all of the sales groups. And then it breaks it down by sales group and within that sales group by item number. So that just kind of gets it in a little more organized manner for you. So once again, though, we can take off the columns if we don't have all those different price levels. We can go ahead and show the report with only the price levels that we needed. Right, so that is a quick way to go ahead and get a look at what items you've already set up.